Live in the feelings of your deepest desires, a quote by Wayne Dyer. Welcome to part 3 of our 4-part series, How to Get Out of Your Own Way in 2023. And today we dive into how to manage our emotions. Hey, I'm Amanda, and welcome to the Best Damn Coach podcast, where I will teach you how to coach yourself, how to coach your clients, and how to run your coaching business. The number one goal of this show, though, is to help you be the best damn coach you can be so your clients go out and tell the world about you. So, let's do the damn thing. Welcome to part 3 of our 4-part series. We are almost there. We are halfway there, really. And I hope you've enjoyed the series so far. If you are just catching this for the first time, I really encourage you to go back and listen to part 1 and 2 of our 4-part series called How to Get Out of Your Own Way in 2023. I've been building off of the parts. We started looking at exposing our gaps. And in part 2, we talked about how setting goals is actually way more than just setting goals. It's about stepping into a new identity. And today, piggybacking off of that discussion, we're going to be talking about emotions and feelings and why managing them is actually the most critical part of the actioning and the tasking that comes along with it. So if you have any questions throughout this whole series, again, we love to hear from you. So please feel free to send us a message. But after this series ends, it's queuing up and teeing up to our 3-part live training that we are hosting on January 17th through the 19th. And if you haven't signed up, I would love for you to come with us. You can head on over to amanda-walker.com/retrain your brain. We are hosting a 3-part series called Get Out of Your Own Way. Learn how to retrain your brain for success and help your clients do the same. So over these 3 days, I'm going to help you do a few things. I am going to help you lock in on why you are struggling with potentially the execution of personal development. I'm also going to help you retrain your brain for personal success without taking lots of time. So I'm going to teach you some modalities that are going to work for you and that you can also give to your clients. And I'm going to teach you just how to access the feeling of confidence in a snap. I can't snap very well, but I am snapping. So if you haven't signed up, again, head on over to amanda-walker.com/retrain your brain. And I want to just mention that as we dive into this 3rd part. So why we set goals is to expand ourselves and to stretch ourselves. So if you think about it, when you set a goal, if you just tap into your goal, right, it feels very expansive. Like it feels like, oh my gosh, that feels so big. It feels so far. And if you're like me, I get this little like game gut feeling, like this nervous energy, little butterflies. And the reason that's important is it excites me into action. Like I think about CrossFit. Often still, even though I've been CrossFitting for 10, 11 years, 12 years, I still, before like the clock says go on a countdown of 3, 2, 1, I still get that game gut because it's like propelling me to start and propelling me into action. And so once we're propelled into action, though, we kind of freak the hell out because we're like, shoot, I don't actually know how to do that. Like I set that goal and it felt exciting and I was excited at the potential, but I don't know how to get there. But here's the thing, friends, that everybody doesn't realize. You are not supposed to know how to get there. That's the entire point. I mean, I can't think of a goal that I have set that didn't excite me and simultaneously scare me to death that I felt like I know how to get there perfectly. Like that's the whole point, right? The important part that we discussed on the last part was it's the journey to become that is critical. Like the journey is trial and error along the way. So you figure out what does and does not work for you. And it literally just makes you feel freaking electric. It makes you feel alive. That's that butterfly feeling. So the entire process of moving towards what we want, that feeling is what I think like humans are made for, is to feel that feeling of excitement and whatever other emotions come along. And that's what our focus is today, is that whatever other emotions come along. Because sometimes though, as we're taking action and once we've been excited into a forward state, we go into complete avoidance of those feelings and other emotions begin to take over. And so I want to paint a picture of what I mean by this. Let's just say that your circumstance or your goal is make $100,000. I'm going to keep off of the same goal that we've been kind of using as an example. And at first you set that goal, and at first your thought is, yes, I want this. And then quickly this other thought comes in, and this thought is, I don't know how to do that. And what happens is, as you think about that goal, if that thought takes over, and you can even practice this as I'm talking, if the thought that predominantly comes in your head is, I don't know how to do this, or I don't have time, or I'm not worthy, what you may not recognize is there's actually a picture in your mind that you begin to paint of your goal or make. So when you think of the goal you have right now, the one we set in part 1 or the one you've set outside of this training, I want you just really quickly just to allow yourself to check this. And we're going to do this more directly inside the training, and I can teach you more purposefully one-on-one or in a group. But when you think of that goal, do you have a picture? And if you have a picture and that feeling in your body is creating doubt, or the feeling you have is doubt or shame or guilt or hopelessness, then what that tells me is you're painting a negative imagery. The thought you have is driving a negative picture about the potential of you successfully achieving this goal. And so when you have that thought and that feeling of doubt, then what do you do? What action do you take? Or rather, inaction do you take? Well, typically we sit like in overwhelm, analysis paralysis. We consume a lot of content and read a lot of books and do a lot of research. We maybe have lots of questions with people. What do you think? Should I not do? But what we don't do is the massive action that actually moves the needle, right? And you can't find an example in any circumstance where this kind of model of thinking to drive results is happening. And so what I want to point out about what I just shared is, if emotions drive you into action or inaction, and the key to emotions is how we think and the pictures we make in our mind, then if we want success to get out of our own way, then the most important work we will ever do is tying together the thought in our mind and the pictures we allow that thought to create. And when we can manage our thoughts, then we are unstoppable. When we manage our thoughts, we become unstoppable. When we manage our thoughts, we get out of our own way and we can see more clearly the path, because we're done with all the unconscious stuff that's holding us back. And I want to clarify, this is not a think different thoughts, get different outcomes conversation. While it is that simple, it is not that easy. And I always like to say simple does not mean easy, right? When we go back, there's so many times where I've coached someone, I'm like, let's go back to the basic. And they're like, it's so simple. I'm like, I know we don't have to abandon that simple works always. But what it does is it literally requires you to retrain your brain to experience thoughts and emotions that drive the actions you want. So let me say it this way. If the path is constantly worn down the feelings that don't drive the actions we want, then that is where our mind will go. So if we think of it, like I always share, as a ski slope, we think a thought, and the thought is chasing the most worn path, the simplest thought, because it's going to be the fastest. It's not going to have to go through all this fresh snow. It's just going to be very simple. And if the thought is, the most worn thought path is, I don't know how to do this, or I can't do this, then that is going to be the thought that is consistently chosen, and the feeling that goes along with that, which for me is doubt or frustration. And if you're trying to run a business or run your life from a constant feeling of doubt and frustration, you are not going to take the action that you want to take. So often, what do? We try to out-action it. But we always go back to the same place because we're not getting to the root, right? So I'm going to say this again. To be successful, to manage our emotions, because emotions drive what we do, the actions we take, it literally requires you to retrain your brain to experience the thoughts and emotions that drive the actions you actually do want every day. And the most primal example of this is a child, by the way. You can see that thought drives action consistently with them. If they're reaching up for something and they're not able to get it, you can almost see the wheels, the thought in their brain, why isn't this working? And you can see frustration. And then the action they take is cry, they throw a fit. Like it's a primal example, toddler tantrum. This is what's happening in our brains consistently. And it's so rapid, you may not even realize it. And this is why, it's important to have these conversations. If we're not managing our thinking and our feelings, our emotions, then we are going to have a really hard time of taking consistent action throughout the trajectory of our goal. So I'm kind of like, if you can master your emotions, then you are going to be so much more successful than a counterpart that isn't spending any time on emotional management. And we're going to spend an entire day, by the way, on emotional management inside our 3-part training. And again, you can sign up at amanda-walker.com/retrain your brain. There's a quote from Wayne Dyer that I think sums up what I'm trying to say. And it is this: live in the feelings of your deepest desires, right? If you go back to day 1 and we talked about the feelings when you were a child, and now we think about your deepest desires, ask yourself, if the things I want, and they don't have to be work related. Obviously this is a podcast where we talk about business, but this can be, amazing children. This could be a future home. This could be healthy parents. This could be debt freedom. I don't care what it is, but I want you to ask yourself, what feelings do I need to live in the most frequently in order to help me move towards that? So you must constantly call in those feelings. You must create them, channel them, connect to them, as I practice all throughout the day, not just like in the morning in your morning routine, but consistently. It's almost like when I see that feeling or feel that feeling coming in that I don't want, I'm like, oh, no, whoop, kick you out. And the problem or the reason we struggle to channel those feelings for me is 2 things. Competing priorities. Like we have a lot of things that we're trying to balance in our life. And so we feel differently about them. And so there's only so much space. So they're like constantly tug of war in our brain. And even sometimes it's competing priorities with emotions, like doubt wants to come in, and then confidence wants to come in, and shame wants to come in, and happiness wants to come in. And there should be naturally that 50-50 contrast. But the other problem is that old patterns come up, an affinity of connecting to the unwanted feelings because they are your norm. Right? And if we have an affinity for those normal feelings that you've always felt, then this is where the work needs to be done. This is emotional management at its finest. And this is what I teach all my clients. This is what I probably coach on the most indirectly. And this is where I think you have an opportunity as a practitioner to support yourself the most. And in doing that, support your clients the most. So again, I'm just going to close out with this last question to ask yourself. What feelings do I need to most connect to create the actions that will move me towards my deepest desires? And this would be a great journaling question. And if this episode is speaking to you, I hope you join us for part 4. We're going to tie it all up. We're going to be talking about consistency. And if you need to go back and listen to some of the other episodes, other parts of the episode series, then enjoy it. But most importantly, my mission is to serve 1 million coaches, practitioners, service-based entrepreneurs to serve 1,000 clients. And the only way I can do that is through your help to grow this podcast. It's impossible for me to do that one-to-one. So I do that through the podcast. I do that through speaking to large groups. So if you would take a second, if this episode speaks to you, take a screenshot of it, share it on your social media, screenshot it to a friend, drop them the link to the episode, because I truly think that this 4-part series is exactly what every single person needs in their life at some point. And why not do it in the new year when all the energy is high and momentum is high as well? So I will see you again for the 4th part, our final part of this series, in just a few days. One of the most important things you will ever do as a coach is ask questions. So I've put together a simple go-to resource that you can have in your back pocket as a coach of 10 powerful questions I believe every coach should know. So go ahead and head on over to amanda-walker.com/questions to grab yours now.